For the artists, for the passionate. Welcome to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Right. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Or welcome if it's your first time. If it is your first time, then this is going to be a bit of a trip for you because this is the 3-year anniversary episode. I've been podcasting for, not quite 3 years as of when I'm recording this, but it's like only a couple of weeks off. So don't worry, it's a trip for me too. Because, I've done a couple of these episodes by now, but it's always just weird to get to the point of, I've been doing this for this long. It's just a very odd moment to reach. I think I've said this every time I've done an episode like this. It feels like not that long, but also like I've been doing it forever, so to have a number on it at all feels a bit weird, but for it to be something like 3 years, I think is, I don't know, that's longer than I've, lived in a lot of places, for one. Like, that's something that is a thing. I moved around a lot in my life, so having 3 years of constancy with really anything is a bit weird at a point. I think it's interesting. I think I know I did this in the first year anniversary episode. I actually don't think I did with the second. But it's interesting to look back at why the Adventures Elsewhere podcast started, because, you'd be forgiven for thinking I just wanted to yap for half an hour about writing and creating and all of those sorts of things, because that's what I do and that's what I love. That's an entirely reasonable assumption to have, but because it's been a while since I've actually talked about this facet of it, I don't know, it's one of those things that I like to look back on because the podcast has significantly impacted my life more than many other things I've done. The Adventures Elsewhere podcast has always been relatively thickly veiled, actually, speech therapy. For me, I have a speech disorder. I have mutism. So the way I've been trying to, it's not something that I think you can really fix, but the way I've been trying to manage that and deal with that is through the podcast. It's literally just saying to myself, okay, you are going to sit here and you are just going to talk for an hour or so. That's been my way of dealing with it, and it's been really difficult in certain episodes. Today is not an exception. If you know what you're listening for, you can hear it in certain episodes. You can hear the episodes that I've found harder than others. And I've learnt a lot about the mutism through the podcast because I've had it for a really, really long time. I've had it for, significantly more than half my life at this point. And for most of that time, I've thought, well, it's just I can either talk or I can't. Relatively recently, as in probably the past 6 to 8 months or so, I've realised that it's really not that clear-cut, actually. It's really not an on-off thing. Sometimes I have days where I can only talk quietly. You can probably tell that's today. Or I can only talk unclearly as well, or it's less clear. I make more mistakes and things like that, and you'll hear that very clearly in my early episodes. I actually don't recommend you listen to those because it's pretty rough. But, that's where I started from. I had to start somewhere, and I've also noticed, I noticed this very, very quickly editing the episodes, is my verbal crutch words. And that really annoys me to this day. I mean, that's the thing I've definitely worked the least on. The thing I've worked on most is just being able to talk more often. And I've come a really long way with developing techniques to make that work. I mean, that's actually been life-changing for me. There's not really another way of putting that. It just has been. Clarity and volume, I still struggle with a lot, but that's a relatively new issue for me to be aware of. So, there's progress there, but it's getting there. The crutch words are definitely, that's something that I really want to fix because I don't like it. I find it grating. I mean, when I'm editing, you don't hear it so much because, I mean, usually I'm actually not that bad. I mean, I'm pretty bad for it. If you ever do a so count on my episodes, then yeah, that's always been one for me. When it gets to a point when it really annoys me in editing, I do actually cut those out. It's one of the few things I actually will bother to edit out. Part of the thing with why the setup looks the way it is to save as much time in editing as possible, because I hate video editing. But yeah, the crutch words is something I do want to work on. That's quite difficult when you're working with something that's unscripted. Part of the point of Adventures Elsewhere podcast is that it's not scripted, because I can read off a script just fine. That's, if I was just reading off a script every week, that would not really solve anything. That's not the difficulty at all. There's a lot more to what I struggle with than that. Being able to talk unscripted and make myself at all coherent, and I do really think I've gotten better at that. It's much more real world, it's much more actually measurably helpful. But I did make one comment right at the start of this section that might have had a few of you going, hang on a minute, because I said I record for an hour. And yeah, there are some long episodes on this channel, but most of them are about half that. 20 minutes to maybe 35 is about average. And no, I don't cut things down that much. Sometimes things do get more edits, but not that much. I record for an hour. That's a sort of rough marker that I have. If I go a bit further, I go a bit further, and that's great. But I try and do at least an hour, and the way I do this is that I do double recordings. I record 2 episodes in one session. Unless the episode happens to be one of those monster hour-long ones, then I'm like, okay, it's been an hour, that's enough. What that means is my backlog is huge, which is useful because you get dry periods in terms of ideas for episodes. So sometimes I'll just have a flood of ideas and I'll make tons of boards or make lots of notes about I could do an episode on this, I could do one on that. And struggling with episode ideas has always been a thing. That's not new, that's been going since the start. The thing that has been most helpful for episode ideas is actually just writing. Like, the long and short of it is, the more things you write, the more ideas you have for things to talk about in a writing sense, because you just end up doing different things. So, yeah. But another thing that's been really helpful for episodes is Adventures Elsewhere Reviews, the sister show where I actually have a camera on. And this was something that I had the idea from like day one of the podcast, was I would like to do indie book reviews on YouTube. That would be something really good to do, because I very much doubt any of my current subscribers actually know about this, but I did have, this YouTube channel has been around for a really, really long time, actually. It's been around for probably 7-8 years at this point. And I used to do other kinds of videos on there, and that was all face cam and lots of editing and basically why stuff like this isn't, and why Adventures Elsewhere reviews is just the one camera and there's no screen capture or anything like that. Because I learned the hard way that video editing is the absolute worst. What I also learned in those earlier days, and I think this was really when I started to realise that I have mutism at all, was just how difficult it was for me to talk as soon as I knew that I was on camera and being filmed. And how much more difficult that is compared to this, where it's just a microphone. It's so much harder. Always has been, still is. So, but I always wanted book reviews to have face cam. I just thought that would work better, especially just for subject matter. But I thought I'm going to take this one step at a time. That's sort of the next step in speech therapy. I think I did actually talk about that in the announcement video for AER. And I said to myself very early in the podcast, I'm not going to do that until I have an episode of the podcast that I can go through for editing and not have to cut out any pauses because of my mutism. And that did happen, and that's when I got serious about launching it. That has happened twice. It happened the one time when I decided to launch AER, and it happened one time within a couple of months afterwards. It hasn't happened again in a while. I have some episodes where I have to edit more, and some where I have to edit less for that. There are other things I look for in edits, so sometimes I'll just pause for thinking time, and that often gets cut because, well, it's the same sort of reason. It's just you don't want seconds and seconds of silence because it's weird to listen to. And that's why AER launched when it did. That had been simmering for years, and I've found a really good way, I think, for me, of doing that. And people who watch that seem to also enjoy it, so that's been really good. Actually, overall, like, AER has just been positive in literally every single way. I've read different books, helped lots of authors, and it's been good for my speech therapy too, so it's just a win all round, and that's exactly what I wanted it to be. I'm glad I launched it when I did, not any sooner, and I'm glad that I'm still doing it. Because talking to camera is a lot less intimidating than it used to be, and again, that has made a difference. So, it's actually made more of a difference than I expected it to. I expected that really to just be a little bit more soft pressure and more of a sort of it only helps in a social media context kind of a thing, but that's actually not been the case. AER has done a lot more for me than that, so that's neat. It's a bit, I mean, I think the most tangible impact that AER has had was that I could record the It's Not Over reincarnation video on the day that I parted ways with Shadowspark. Yes, that was scripted, loosely. That was, I think, the only video that's currently on the... No, actually, that's not true. It's one of two that has any kind of script. But that I could do that, I think that was definitely one of those I've come a long way moments, and that felt really good. But talking of the future of this channel a bit, because AER did kind of come out of nowhere, and at some points has sort of pushed the podcast to the side a bit. There are just a few things I want to clarify, and a few things you should be looking forward to as well. First and foremost, the podcast is not gonna die, basically, ever, because it's too good for me. It does too much good in my life for me to ever stop doing it. Yeah, there was a point or two where I had some unplanned hiatuses, but they were massively net negative for me, and I have been doing my absolute damnedest ever since to not do that. AEP is just really good for me. It's not going to stop because that would just be really unhelpful. And there's always more to talk about when you write things, when you keep experimenting as a writer and doing different things. There are always more things to talk about, so that's cool. If anything, there are actually going to be more podcast episode uploads because, as I mentioned earlier with the double recordings thing, the backlog is huge because it's a 2-for-1, and I upload every other week for the podcast generally. And if there are a lot of book releases close together, that can sort of push the podcast aside a bit. The backlog gets very big very quickly, and having episodes sat around for a long time is just... I don't particularly like that, so there actually might be more podcast episodes coming within the foreseeable. There might be spates where there are more uploads because of that. Also, more workshops, because they've been so good for figuring things out. I actually, as I speak this, I think I know of another one that I might do soon, because I think it would be a good way to solve an issue that I'm having. There's something I am debating that will probably get announced before this episode goes live, to be honest, or very shortly afterwards. The workshop would be really good to work out for, actually. Talking of AER and the future of that, it is lumpy. It really depends what time people's books release. There was a real spate of a lot of book releases in and around April, unsurprisingly. So there was a lot of reading, a lot of recording, a lot of reviewing then, because I do my best to get things out around people's release days. It just makes the most sense for everybody, to be honest. So there have been quite a lot recently on the channel. That might slow down a bit, it might not, I don't know. Because there is a very big disconnect between when I record things and when I upload them. You can see that on my screen capture is sometimes a little bit funny, and you can actually sometimes see the date in the corner, and it's quite different sometimes when I record things and when they get uploaded. Sometimes you can quite literally see when I recorded it. I think my biggest record is 4 months between recording and uploading. There might be one that's a bigger gap than that. I challenge you to find it. That might be quite a fun game if you're ever just bored. Another thing to note is I am also just a terrible, terrible mood reader. So I just have a lot of books on my shelves that I have not gotten around to. So Exiles of a Gilded Moon 2, I probably read the first book like nudging on 2.5 years ago or something like that, and I bought the second book straight away, and I still just haven't read it because I'm that bad a mood reader. I am not making that up. So I go through real phases with reading, where I'll read tons of stuff very, very quickly, and then I will not read anything for quite a while. So that's why AER looks the way it does. Ideally, the sort of idea with that is sometimes it can replace the AEP episode. If I come to the scenario of just, wow, I really don't have anything for AEP that is edited and ready to upload, which has happened, but ideally it sort of slots in quite nicely, and the uploads can sort of be weekly with that if there are enough books that can look quite nice. But it's... AEP has somewhat of a regular sort of every other week schedule. AER just doesn't, because it just doesn't work like that. As to the broader future of this channel, there's actually going to be a lot of new stuff coming, and some things that I want to experiment with. So reincarnation updates are coming. I have one lined up ready to record. I actually did a take of it, but I really didn't like the take of it that I did, so I'm going to redo it. Rare that I do that, by the way. If I don't like a take, that's usually within like the first 2 minutes. But so reincarnation updates, this channel just seems like a good place to do that. It just makes a lot of sense. Video is quite a free-form way of doing that. So that just works quite nicely. The podcast is also just a good forum for experimenting and ideation around reincarnation. It all just fits together really nicely for that. That's going to be coming basically imminently, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Also, in August, for Indie August, there will be a big announcement about AEA. This was something that I very nearly did in 2025, and I kind of regret that I didn't. I chickened out at the last minute, I'll be completely honest, and it just didn't happen, and that was really disappointing, actually. So I'm doing it this year, and yes, that's all about indie books, and that's going to be really fun. I'm really looking forward to that, actually. That's just one of those really big community hype things for Indie August, and the big meat of that, well, there'll be a whole introductory episode, I think, that's not dissimilar to the AER introductory episode, but the big meat of that, of AEA, and this is a proper scoop for you, that's December. I also just have other ideas of things that I want to do with the determined ones, and things that, like videos and ideas and things like that, that will end up on this channel at some point, because it's the best forum for them. I don't know exactly what that looks like or when that'll be happening, but there's some stuff I might experiment with on that front, so that'll be fun. That's much further in the future, though. So, there you have it, 3 years. Where it came from, where AER came from, because that really wasn't just out of the blue. Realising that the AER colour is blue, straight after I say that. But yeah, that's 3 years of the podcast that will be going ad infinitum, because it's just that much, it's just that useful in my life, and the sorts of things you can look forward to on this channel, because there's actually a lot that I am genuinely excited for, even though it means video editing. I know it sounds like a bit of a joke, but if I can get excited about a video project, even despite knowing it's going to be a lot of video editing, that's genuinely pretty hype. So, little housekeeping as usual. Reincarnation is coming, the determined ones will return, it will be stronger, it will be absolutely awesome, is the bottom line. And yeah, that's going to be really cool. I have so many cool ideas for that. This channel is going to be somewhat of a hub of ideation and everything for that. So you don't want to be missing that stuff, and you don't want to be missing the reincarnation updates that'll be coming soon either. And if you're interested in what I'm doing more in the current moment, in a more sort of what's happening live kind of a way, if you like the vibe around here, if you just love the podcast and the book reviews, then Instagram is the place you want to go. Because that's the place where I announce what the episode of the week is, because at some point I have to decide what it is. There's also just a lot of indie book hype on there. I've been doing some sort of writer thoughts and whatnot stuff on there as well. I don't really know what I'm doing on Instagram. I kind of just put things on there, and it's a bit of a throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks kind of a platform, which is very much what the vibe of the podcast is. So if you like it here, you'll like it there. I'm Jade_Black21 on there. If you want to know more about my writing in as close to real time as you can get, then Twitter is the place to go. I've been doing a lot of micros on there lately. I've been hosting micro prompts, and that's been really fun. People have been really enjoying that, and that's been really cool. I also host the monthly Thrills prompts, and if you're listening to this close to release time, we're getting very close to a very big anniversary for that too. So that's pretty cool. All genres are welcome. So that's Twitter, that's JBlack21. Pinterest is still undergoing reinvention, but that will be really cool. If you like the podcast, you'll absolutely love the vibe over there. That's Jade_Black21. Blue Sky is my game dev account. It's my game dev platform. I am looking at getting back into game dev. So if you're interested in that, JBlack21, but Don't expect to see me on there all too often. I forget it exists. And if you are published or well on the way, please do get in touch. I would like to be a part of your indie author journey. I never know how to say that in a way that doesn't sound like Twitter scammer. It's actually a thing. Any case, my email is on the screen. I've talked at length already about the fact that I do book reviews. I'm quite picky about what I'll review, just bear that in mind. I do have a whole information video about that, and there are cheat sheets at the end of every AER episode about that. They're not comprehensive by definition, but they'll give you a pretty good idea. I also do write interviews on the podcast. It's not something I've done for a long time because nobody's asked about it, it's a long and short. But it is something I'm willing to do, so if that sounds like your jam, if you'd like a podcast interview, get in touch. For what it's worth, when it comes to podcast interviews, I prioritise indie dark lit because there are so few spaces for indie dark lit, and no, that does not include dark fantasy, but I am willing to speak to basically anyone about anything. The only real exception is TradPub. I might consider it if you're TradPub and you're new to the space and your publisher is just like not supporting you at all, because there are too many TradPub publishers like that, but generally speaking, the answer will be no. 3 years of the podcast, and many more years to come. If you like the vibe around here, celebrate, rejoice. I'm not going anywhere. And there's so much more coming for the channel, so that's cool too. And until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like, or commenting, or subscribing. It really does help the channel a lot. All music is done by me. Copyright Jade Black 2025.